Helen's Temper and Its Consequences. Chapter 4. Practical Betty. Betty had to undergo a certain amount of persecution from Helen, Alice, and Mary about her new friend. They even declared that they would go to tell Miss Hearn and tell her that they were not going to associate with a dirty beggar girl. But this threat did not affect Betty. She remembered her teacher would uphold the lame girl's coming to the school. Helen did not dare to express her contempt for Louisa openly. She felt sure her mother and grandfather would be angry if they knew how much she disliked the little cripple. And so she mocked and jeered at Betty when they were alone, and even struck her sister in passion one day when she refused to promise not to take Louisa to the Sunday school again. Betty was often sorely tempted to tell her mother of Helen, but the child disliked to give pain to her parent. So she resolved to remain silent as long as Helen only laughed and mocked, but did not openly attack Louisa. At the same time, she told Helen with great determination that if she showed any unkindness to Louisa, she would inform mother and grandfather, and the latter knew that her sister would keep her word. Betty had a hymn book that had been her companion for many years, and she had long desired to have a new one. She counted her halfpence and found she had enough to make her purchase, for she only wanted 1 shilling. So she determined to give her a well-worn book to Louisa, and buy another for herself. When Wednesday afternoon came, Mrs. Smith and Helen went out shopping together, and Betty resolved that she would take her present to her new friend, first asking her mother's consent. Mrs. Smith readily granted it and said, "You may take a few apples with you, Betty. I have picked out some rosy-cheeked ones. They will please Louisa and her sisters." Betty could not resist giving her mother a hearty kiss. Then she packed away the apples in her own little basket and started off to see Louisa. She found her at home with her sisters. Her father had gone to the hospital, and her mother was at her washing. Betty had not been inside the room before, and now that it was small and uncomfortable, the corners were black with dust and dirt. The walls were damp and colorless, and the furniture was old and rickety. Louisa sat on a broken chair with her knitting, while the sisters rolled on the ground with grinning faces and uncombed hair. But the trio looked happy and contented. They were talking over a story that Louisa had just finished. The lame girl was delighted to see her new friend. She put the best chair forward for her to sit upon, and she evidently thought that Betty's clean frock and tidy appearance would not be improved by a sojourn in the dirty room. For she said blushingly, as if in apology, "Mother went out very early and had no time to clean the room, and the last few nights she has been so tired that she was obliged to go to bed directly she came home." "Can you not help your mother to keep the room neat and clean?" said Betty. "It would be a good thing for her to rest every evening after her hard work." "I do not know," replied Louisa softly, for I never tried." "I think you could try. I think you can if you try," said Betty kindly. "You're nearly as big as I am, and I often sweep out the room, take the ashes out of the grate, and clean it up. And my mother says I do it very well." But your rooms are better than ours," answered Louisa, looking around the narrow four walls. I only wish we had a different home." "I know our rooms are larger," said Betty, "but they will not keep themselves clean any more than yours will. And my mother says every place is worth keeping clean, however small and humble it may be, and we ought to make it look as nice as we can. I know what I would do if I were you, Louisa. I would scrub the room out before my mother came home, and then I would fill the pail with clean water and see if I could not wash some of the dirt and dust away from the corners. And if you like, I'll show you how to begin." Betty was very active at home and could do the work of a much older person. Her mother often said she did not know what she could do without her. But it was a difficult matter to make Louisa believe she could clean a room. She had only been taught to knit, for Mrs. Hall thought that her lame daughter had no strength to spare for hard work. And in her love and thoughtfulness for Louisa, she forgot how much happier her child's life would be if she felt she were assisting her mother, and thus not quite shut out from being useful to someone. Louisa had been content to sit still and allow her mother to do the homework, without reflecting in how many ways she might lighten her heavy burden. Betty's words made Louisa think seriously, and after a pause of a few minutes, she turned to her friend and said, "Do you really mean that you will help me?" "Of course I do, this very minute," answered practical Betty, taking off her cloak and hat. Then she turned the chairs and Louisa's sisters into the bedroom that opened out of the room which served for Louisa to sleep in at night, for the family to live in during the day. The young ones were easily managed. Betty's activity was so new to them that they were quite content to stand in the doorway and watch her movements. "I'll tell you what I'll do," said Betty. "I'll scrub the floor, and you can clean the walls, because just at first it won't do for you to begin with such hard work." Louisa found a scrubbing brush which had been evidently seen great service, and a ragged flannel with a lump of common yellow soap. And Betty had been down to the pump in the yard, and returned with her pail full of water by the time that Louisa had routed these articles out of the cupboard. Betty set to work in good earnest, as if she knew what she was about, and she had scrubbed many floors before, and Louisa tried to rub some of the dirt off the paper and the cobwebs from the corners. And then washed the paint on the doors and the windows. Then she cleaned the glass through which the sun had not been able to penetrate for many a long day. And Louisa's sisters clapped their hands with delight when they saw the panes of glass looking so bright and clean. Betty looked up from her scrubbing and said, "Mind you never flatten your noses against the windows again. Then they will keep clean longer." The girls worked on, heedless of time, until the room was clean. It was only half the size of Betty's mother's parlor, and she had finished the floor in an hour. The day was windy, and the sun shone brightly, and sun and wind helped to dry the floor quickly. At the end of 2 hours, the old chairs and rickety table were back in their proper places, and Betty had tried to make Louisa's sisters useful, and had showed them how to dust, and made them put the furniture where it usually stood. After this, Betty, Louisa, and the 2 girls sat down to rest. Betty's face was hot, and Louisa felt very tired, but there was so much pleasure mixed with the weariness that no one regretted it. "Betty, you have made me so happy," said Louisa. "I shall try and be more useful every day. And if I can't be like the other children and play, I shall still be able to help Mother and make her home look brighter when she comes in tired. And Father, too, will be so pleased. I wonder why I never tried before." "Because no one put it into your head," replied Betty. "If Mother hadn't taught me and shown me and made me useful, I should have done it myself." "I dare say your mother didn't teach you out of kindness because she thought it would hurt your back. I hope she won't be angry with me for letting you work." "Oh dear, no," answered Louisa. "I shall tell her how happy I am to be useful. My days will go so much faster. And there's another thing you must learn to do. That is, to comb and dress your sisters." Then Betty told the little ones a story about tidy children, and encouraged them to try to help themselves. After that, they talked about the Sunday school, and Betty asked Louisa not to mind if Helen and her friends said unkind words, or mocked and laughed at her. Later on, Betty brought out her hymn book, and lastly, she divided her rosy-cheeked apples. The 3 hours Betty had to stay passed very rapidly. The children liked listening, and their visitor had so much to say. The apples elicited a scream of delight from Louisa and her sisters. They so seldom tasted fruit that they valued them the more. Betty was preparing to go home when the children asked her to teach them how to sing a hymn. So she sat down again and was busy engaged in making Louisa and her sisters repeat the words of a verse after her. When the door opened and Mr. Hall entered the room, he did not appear to notice anyone or anything, but sank down on an old chair in the corner, evidently much exhausted. And Betty saw that he was very weak, for his hands trembled, and his face looked so pale. "I must go now," said Betty, who feared that the invalid would not care to have a stranger in the room. "Goodbye, dears," and with a kind look of sympathy at the suffering man, she left the king's yard. As Betty walked towards her more comfortable home, she puzzled her little brain to know how it would be best to help Louisa's father to get better and obtain employment. These questions were rather beyond Helen. She determined to refer them to her mother, who she knew would be ready to aid with her advice and sympathy. If you like this video, press the like button or the subscribe button. Bye!